Hey everyone, welcome to the Next in Time podcast. I'm your host, ST Tangarala, and today our guest is none other than Isaac Mashman. He's been a great influence upon me in terms of how to develop a branding strategy, and he is looking to help others in the future dealing with their branding issues and looking to see if he's able to help out people with branding in general. So, Isaac, welcome to the show.
ST, what is going on, man? Great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, no worries. How's the weather been in your area?
How's the weather been? Burning hot, scorching,
Yeah, I
but
know.
good to sweat.
I know. I've been here before. I have dealt with the heat wave the last couple of days, and it's just unbearable. But yeah, so let me ask you some quick questions. Less for example, it could be like, what has been one highlight so far in the past week or month in what you've been doing?
One of the highlights is I recently launched alongside my public relations firm, Mashman Ventures, the Training by Mashman Ventures platform. And this is something that has been in my mind's eye for literally years. And I finally got down and it was in the plans. And so using that platform for our clients to sell digital products in the future, as well as offering some free resources for people to download. So super excited to have that up, have that completed, have that done, and have several hundred people currently already on board.
Yeah, that's good because I think when I first met you, you were already like someone who's successful but hasn't been as is working on his way to become like the number one brander for a lot of businesses out there. So how are you working towards that goal?
Well, I'm working with people to build out their personal brands. So rather than working with, let's say, the company itself, I'd work with the CEO, I'd work with the business owner, or I'd possibly work with an influencer, an author to establish their reputations online. And so I'm very, very heavy when it comes to the organic approach to building out your personal brand, leveraging the algorithms that are already in place, leveraging the unique characteristics to you that people can connect with. And so every single interaction and conversation, just like having this podcast right here, is an example of me building out my own personal brand, and that's going to speak volumes. And so I help other people do the same, except in their own specific business, in their own specific field. I mean, this wasn't my first business. It's my first registered business, but prior to launching Mashman Ventures, I was in network marketing. I did clothing. I did a variety of different tasks and different things, and along the lines, started to learn and understand how you can build a successful personal brand.
Yeah, understood. So you're also the host of Chase the Vision with Isaac Mashman, and also you're a number one bestseller with Personal Branding and Manifesto of Fame and Influence. So tell me about those projects. What were some of the challenges you faced in those projects, and how were you able to, make those into what they are right now?
Well, I've had Chase the Vision since 2019, and I'm actually ending the show. The show's already ended. It ended earlier this month in June. And the premise of it was a platform to share my own experiences in life, business, and personal growth. But I felt like I've outgrown that and decided to go into a different realm, into a different focus of more so making a statement rather than convincing you to listen to something, stating why you should listen and just being me. And then my book I published last year, and to clarify, it's a number one bestseller in public relations, it's a top 10 bestseller in public relations. It was the number one new release in public relations on Amazon. And that was a lot of fun to write, stressful. But it was something that I wanted to get out there to kind of explain the what and why of personal branding. What is personal branding and why is it important that you build your own, to kind of highlight the experience, to highlight the importance, to highlight, you know, really why somebody should take the time to build it. And there were a lot of different misconceptions that I also covered at the same time.
All right, cool. Because I saw your biography that you're about 22 years old right now, 21, 22 years old. And as of right now, you're like one of the youngest people out there in America who is very successful in what he's doing. Like, tell me about your background on how you managed to get to where you are right now, and and also the vision that you're looking to create for the future.
Yeah, well, it was an undeniable tenacity and a psychotic attitude and taking a lot of risks. There were multiple moments where I aggressively went after something and I was ruthless about obtaining that goal. And it wasn't that I was treading on anybody else to get there. That's not how I do things, but rather if I wanted to get verified on a platform or I wanted to get opportunities to come to me, I would actively seek out those opportunities and make it to where I couldn't be denied. And then when it comes to myself and developing myself as an individual, as a man, as an entrepreneur, building out personal development and focusing on that was extremely vital to my growth. I think a lot of people underestimate the power of building up their own knowledge. So, for example, if I sucked at sales once upon a time, would take the time and send out 3 paragraphs to try to get somebody on a connection call, and that was me starting out. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not seeing results. I suck at this. And what did I do? I actively sought out ways that I could improve my sales skills. Found mentors, found resources, and I'm really going to take that and apply it moving forward and taking all of the knowledge that I've learned in the past half decade and taking it, leveraging it, and really that being the catalyst that gets me the next quantum leap to where I want to be.
All right, cool. So, yeah, because one thing that you're really specialized in is personal branding. One area that I feel like a lot of businesses out there they need help with. I mean, if you had to choose one thing, every business or even individual or any entity out there that definitely needs a way to showcase themselves is via branding. So, what made you an expert in what you're doing, especially on the branding side of things?
Well, personal branding and branding are two separate things. Personal branding speaks to the person, the brand speaks to the company or to the podcast, to the book, to the work, whatever it might be. But personal branding is the individual behind it. And like I said earlier, whenever I got involved with business, I went through half a dozen different ventures and failed at each, didn't get far in each. But I started to become the person in my friend group and the social circles. They would come to me and say, hey, what can I do to be better? Can you help me improve my social media page? Can you do this? Can you do that? And at that moment, I realized that even when I was younger, I always paid attention to branding and paid attention to how people operated and also sought out to understand celebrities, understand artists, understand influencers. And through that and through just the application of what I knew up to that point, I started to realize the areas that I could improve and actively sought out knowledge. And so if somebody's listening to this and they want to be an authority, you don't call yourself an authority. You don't call yourself an expert, but you become that expert and you become that authority by other people speaking about you and calling you as such, doing
Right.
things that will validate your actions in the market.
Okay. And so in my mind, because when I first met you, you were about 20 or 22 years old. But the funny thing I've always noticed about you is that you seem very wise beyond your years in terms of how you do branding. Because people out there they think of 21-year-old people your age or our age that they're still young. They don't know if they can be taken seriously, and they always believe that age is a benefit in terms of giving advice and whatnot. But how do people take you seriously as a brand strategist?
Interesting question, and actually a really, really great question as well, because age can work to your advantage and it can also work to your disadvantage. For example, if you're old, you're over 60s or 50s even, or even I would say relevant 40s, people can say, oh, why would you know the first thing about social media? I've recently talked to somebody who's nearing her 60th birthday, or she might have already crossed it. And she's like, a lot of times people are like, how do you know about social media? Like, you're already old. And so that's one way that it can be a disadvantage. But what I've realized is it's actually it's an advantage, right? Excuse me, because a lot of times people who are older seek that young blood, seek that young energy, seek that young attention because they know that we were raised in this era. But what I've done is most people, whenever they come and talk to me, they don't know that's my age. And I very rarely lead with my age because of that very reason. But now it makes that even the more impactful and more powerful whenever somebody comes and finds out my age because they're like, man, Isaac, I thought you were at least 25 or 28. And that to me is actually kind of fun because I'm able to kind of, surprise them and turn heads, which gets people to talk. So it's cool.
Yeah, it's just people always like people see that you're like wise beyond your years, which that's you're like a rarity amongst a lot of people your age. And yeah, I'm really glad that you're working your way towards becoming the brand expert for these clients, but for these people. But what are some challenges you faced in terms of the clients that you worked with in terms of creating their personal brand? Let's say, for example, let's say if a person working with a brand says they do not like what you do and whatnot, how are you able to overcome that challenge?
Well, number one, I'd say when the client doesn't listen, and this is a very fine subject to talk about because you got to obviously respect your client, but the client is not always right. And that might be ballsy to say, but the truth be told, if the client isn't listening to what you're suggesting or telling them to do the steps, the homework that you assigned them, how do you expect that they're going to get results? And they oftentimes assume that it will just come naturally. So that's one conversation. That's one adversity. The other thing is really, not having anybody to back me, from a family standpoint. I was kind of that black sheep, ironically, for being the excellent student and being that person. I always had that rebellious attitude to where if you told me to go left, I'd go right. And my early years, I was trying to prove something. And I say early years, but literally the first 3 years I was doing this, I was proving it to my parents, to people at school, to just everybody but myself. I was proving it to myself, but it was mainly about other people. And over the past year and a half, there's been this transition about me, rather than proving it to somebody else, proving it to myself. And having that level of spite is one thing, but you have to stay focused and just persist, even though everything is telling you not to do it. But then the moment that you see a win, you see something that's good, you see something that's going your way, you take that, you grab it, and you realize that, hey, this is validation for my journey. This is validation to what I'm doing.
Okay, give me one example of a client that you felt like you've transformed their entire business because of personal branding.
Well, I can go ahead and speak to somebody who's actually not, well, wasn't in business, and I don't think you'll have an issue with me mentioning his name, but a good friend of mine now, Logan Mandeville, and he's actually the lead personal trainer on the Mashman Ventures team. We started working together in 2021 as a client relationship, and he was a male model. Like, don't get me wrong, he has good physique. He's a good looking dude by all means, but people were viewing him just as a sex symbol, but not as a man, not as an individual, and so what we ended up doing is I worked with him and helped him launch Mandeville Fitness. And I mean, he's seen excellent success with that. His social media following has grown exponentially with, the application of strategies. And he's been able to move from West Virginia down to Miami. And I don't like taking credit, but he's told me on multiple occasions, even though I've told him like I'm not taking credit. He's like, no, Isaac, seriously, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be where I'm at. And that was really an exciting thing. I have another client out of Canada who's an author, Christina M. Hawley, and she's an author, but she was in the corporate world for 2 decades. And within the first 2 weeks of listening, I'd say honestly, a week and a half of training her, hey, this is how you can pitch yourself, just as supplemental, a supplemental training, because getting into the press is one aspect of public relations. It's not the entire package, though. She was able to get into her first article. And so all of these different things, all of these different small wins, they contribute to your overall personal brand, your credibility, your reputation, so on and so forth.
Understood, understood. So now you've gotten some good successes right now, but now since this podcast is all about the future, where you see yourself in your future, or what vision you're trying to build in the future, I'd like to go deeper into that aspect where I'm trying to see like what's your overall vision coming into the future.
Well, it's honestly to play Monopoly in real life. That's something have you ever played Hasbro's Monopoly? You sit around with your friends and you go for literally hours on end, just playing Monopoly. And it's a highly competitive game. It can ruin relationships and friendships. But I want to be able to play Monopoly in real life, not just build successful businesses, but take it to a higher level with owning real estate. I bought my first two pieces of property at the beginning of this year and scaling it and scaling the empire into other things. I'm not just, I don't want to be referred to as an entrepreneur. I want to be referred to as a businessman, as
Right.
an individual, as a public figure, somebody that people can learn from, laugh at maybe a joke I tell, or feel motivated and aspire to be like. And everything that I've done to a degree has contributed to that up to this point. And now it's just taking it to an infinitely high level. It's all about scale. And scale has been a word that's been on my mind a lot lately.
Like, do you have like a particular industry you want to tackle, or are you very open minded to any industry?
A particular industry. It's interesting. Entertainment, honestly. And it's not something that it's one of the industries. Real estate is going to be where I make a lot of my money. Investments will be nice because I'll be able to have more influence in companies and be able to really change the landscape of the world with the solutions that I'm invested in. But I would say entertainment is something that I enjoy because I've always been told, and is that hey, you have a great speaking voice. You'd make a great pastor. You'd make a great this. You make a great that. And entertainment is one thing that most business people fail to do. They fail to entertain their audience because they only come across as that businessman. And I never want to just come across as that. And so if I ever have the opportunity of getting on a TV show or getting into Hollywood or getting into a certain thing, it's like I'm definitely going to jump on that because I think that the point of getting into business and such isn't for freedom. We already have freedom. The thing that we want is options. We want to be
Right.
able to go to that higher option. It's just like when you're at a store, you have buying decisions. You can go with one product or you can go with the most expensive product. And I want to be able to take that and have the option to do what I want. And if I want to get into entertainment, I can.
And so, would you like to be more of a like an influencer in a way in the future? Like, I mean, you already are an influencer right now because of your book, your podcast, your former podcast, and also the way you're trying to portray your vision is like you want to be someone trying to make a difference in terms of how people feel, right? Like they want
Well,
to,
it's something that's done naturally, and influencer is actually a derogatory term.
yeah,
I don't take it personally, but I think people who are referred to as influencers are actually kind of derogatory because influencers don't have longevity. And this is what I really emphasize whenever I'm working with clients. You don't want to be an influencer, you want to be a celebrity. Now, I might not outright say my goal is to be a celebrity in a podcast, but if you break it down and read between the lines, it's exactly what I'm saying.
yeah.
But the thing is that influence can be directed for good and it can be directed for bad. And then we can get into the conversation of ethics in business and working for something that's not just self-centered but something that's also good for the rest of the world. But we live in a society, ST, and I think you probably would agree with me to where everybody throws around these buzzwords and make it about the other person. Be humble, sit down, do this, da da da. And in actuality, we fail to realize that by focusing on ourselves, not in an egomaniac way or in a narcissistic way, but saying, hey, if this airplane is going down, I'm putting on my oxygen mask first so I can help the person next to me. That's what you need to do in life. You focus on yourself, and by focusing on yourself, you're naturally helping other people if you're like that as a person. And that's kind of one of the mantras that I live by.
Understood. So, regarding the vision you're trying to create for the future, like what challenges do you see do you see that's going to come to you? Then how are you going to work your way towards solving those challenges? Do you feel? I mean,
I don't see.
yeah,
Yeah, no. Go ahead.
no, but I was like, it's not. We don't know what challenges are going to come, but at least there are some predictable challenges coming to you in the future that could happen. That could maybe be a dent or something like that. But how do you manage to now overcome that?
Well, I don't see any challenge that I'm being faced with coming from external parties. And obviously you have front-facing challenges of, for example, if I get into real estate, supply chain issues or, those different things, local government issues, laws, policies, etc. But the biggest issue that I see I'm being faced with, if I can be personable, is the issues within self, because that's the one thing, we always focus on external issues but we fail to focus on internal issues. And yes, some of that is naturally overcame through personal development, but the imposter syndrome is something that many people many people face, especially when they're put up against this big dream that they have in their minds. And the thing is, the way that you conquer the imposter syndrome is by doing more. By doing more, you don't have time to think about, am I good enough? And then you'll eventually have more of those validating moments. But it's really just going to require me being consistent with what I'm doing and overcoming those, making those good decisions on a day-to-day basis that will lead up and stack up over time.
All right, sounds good. And just another last, I think we're going to segue into some final questions regarding regarding like just basically like what's your advice and whatnot. So the question would be, what advice you would give to other founders, or let's say people who are trying to build a vision of the future. So since you work with them on branding, and even just giving them the pathway to develop themselves further. Like, what advice would you give to them if they want to create a future of their of a future vision?
Well, I would say ideally you need to be building out your personal brand as the face of a company. And that's something that can be uncomfortable because it's easy to say, "Oh, I'm an introvert." Are you really an introvert, or are you just telling yourself that you are? It's a conversation of nature versus nurture. But I would definitely suggest that anybody who's building a business, they become the face of the business. You talk to every single person you know about the business. You talk, even if you're not involved with entrepreneurship, but you could be in your career, you could be in business, or not business, but in a business as an intrapreneur, you should still be leveraging your personal brand. And my podcast was previously Chase the Vision. In my book, Personal Branding Manifesto on Fame and Influence, my final chapter is called Chase the Vision, because there's always going to be something that you're chasing, that you're pursuing, that you're adding, that you're working towards, that you're never really going to achieve. You achieve one aspect of it and you set a bigger goal, you set a bigger one, or a bigger accomplishment, as I like to refer to them. And so I'd say, and this goes to the internal challenges of not being comfortable, not getting too, you know, I guess you could say just easygoing,
Right.
saying, "Oh, I'm here. I'm already there. Why do I need to keep going?" And I think at that moment is when you start to die a little bit inside. And that's why mortality rates skyrocket once people retire. They stop moving, they take it easy, and then they die a couple years later. That's not how you live life.
Yeah, definitely. Because for me, it's more like even when you, no matter what age you are, it's important to stay active in what you're doing because
Absolutely.
that alone keeps you younger. That alone keeps you vibrant. And even there are a lot of people out there who are like 90, 100 years old who still have the spark. I mean, for example, you know Dick Van Dyke, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the guy, I mean, the former guy from Mary Poppins and everything. Yeah, you know, he's 96 years old, but he is someone who's very sprite in what
Mm.
he's very active. He doesn't seem like someone who is 96 years old, and he's definitely going to be make it to past 100 years old because of the way he's active. He's very vibrant, even at that age. So I feel like that's kind of how you want everyone to be in a way. Everyone has to be active. Everyone has to keep themselves vibrant with what they're doing. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm referring to, right,
Well,
Isaac?
yeah. Let's talk about Jimmy Carter, President Jimmy Carter. He's 97 years old and he still makes headlines. I've seen things in the past where he's sitting out on the front porch making birdhouses, or he's taking. I saw something recently to where, and this transcends political viewpoints. You could love or hate whatever a president does politically and what they stand for, but you have to respect them as an individual, as a man or a woman. And he's on the airplane and he went up to everybody and shook their hands, and that speaks to how they are and how you have to be as a person. He's not doing that to become known by everybody, but he's doing that just to express gratitude and say, "Hey, thank you, thank you for whatever you're doing to contribute to society." For example. But he's active, he's doing things, and the moment that you stop doing things is, and we could get into statistics and talk about that conversation, but I would like to think that if we're focusing on people in the future, most of the people listening are probably relatively young.
Yeah. I mean, there are also older people who are looking to build a different future for themselves. Even when, let's say, we're 60 years old, but they're trying to build their own their new business and everything like that. For example, if you recall Harlan Sanders, the founder of KFC, he was not he was not successful in his business in the business of selling fried chicken until he was 65. And then
Yeah.
that when he started at 60, sorry, when he started at 65 building KFC, he made it that's when he started like taking off as someone. He was a relatively unknown person until he hit that phase at 65 where where his business started taking off and everything. So yeah, I mean, if anyone has any doubts, any questions as to where the timeline is and everything, just let me know. But anyway, so just a final question. So where can we find you in whether it's through social media or in any manner?
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, SD, thank you for inviting me on, man. Great to be the person who helps you launch off the first episode. I'm excited for this to come out. And everybody can find me online at Isaac Mashman, ISAAC, just like you're seeing in the interview title. You can also go to isaacmashman.com, and if you want a public relations firm to work with and help you build out your personal brands, you can follow the company everywhere at Mashman Ventures.
All right, cool, Isaac. Yeah, thank you so much for being part of Next in Time, especially with the first episode. And always looking forward to seeing how your vision will turn out in the future. And if your vision turns out successful, you're always welcome to join back and give the audience updates.
100% ST.
All right. Thank you so much, Isaac, and hope you have a good rest of your day.